This video is brought to you by the letter L. There are 8 Rush albums that end with the letter. It's at the bottom of the liner notes, starting with Power Windows, skipping one of the albums along the way, all the way through Clockwork Angels. Rush has included a brought to you by the letter. This comes from Sesame Street. The idea, right? This episode is brought to you by the letter. Well, do you know which Rush albums are associated with which letter? I'm Eric. This is a Loudboy Experience, and let's go. Eight albums were brought to us by a letter. Let's start with number 1. Which album was brought to us by the letter B? The letter B. Which Rush album? Let's roll the bones. Vapor Trails 2002 was brought to us by which letter? There's a clue right there. I just kind of did an air quote. Which, quote, letter? Yeah, Vapor Trails was brought to us by the letter, the number 3. Counterparts was brought to us by what symbol? It's not a letter, a question mark. Presto was brought to us by which letter? Presto, 1989. Which letter? D, as in dog. Yes, D. Which album among these albums, starting with Power Windows, ending with Clockwork Angels, that has no letter? However, at the end of the liner notes, it does say the Omega Concern, which is something that's actually in several of the liner notes. Yeah, it's Hold Your Fire. That's right. 1987. No letter. Which album was brought to us by the letter M? Power Windows, 1985. Test for Echo was brought to us by which letter? R, 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 R. R, 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 R. Yeah, four R's. Snakes and Arrows. Snakes and Arrows was brought to us by which letter? 5 S's, as in snakes and arrows. Very good, very good. Clockwork Angels is brought to us by which letter, but combination of letters, more of a symbol. You guys remember? It's O-E, O-E. Let's talk about some of the fan theories out there. Power Windows, of course, brought to us by the letter M, 1985. There are 5 tracks on Power Windows that begin with the letter M, starting with Manhattan Project, Marathon, Middletown Dreams, Mystic Rhythms, and The Big M and the Big Money. Here's some theories on Presto, 1989. It's brought to us by the letter D. This was around the era where, again, we were coming out of analog, out of vinyl and tape, and moving into CD, and even CD had a phase where you saw it on the discs, right? Where it was recorded in analog, mixed in analog, and mastered in digital. Of course, it has to be mastered in digital in that it ends up on a digital platform. We then move from ADD to finally DDD, okay, where we're recording digitally, right? And tech had to come up, computers had to come up, storage had to come up, software had to all rise to the occasion to be studio worthy and to be worthy of recording and mixing and mastering an album. The 3 Ds, okay? Record, mix, master. And those 3 Ds did it was a big deal when we went fully digital, which is all we know now, of course. But there's a theory that Presto 89 is brought to us by the letter D because Neil is kind of giving an homage, a tip of the hat to the fact that we are now in the digital age. There are some other theories out there, but guess what? I don't put much stock in them. I like that one. Roll the Bones, 1991. Of course, we have skipped along the way from Power Windows. Before Presto, we have skipped Hold Your Fire. There is no letter with it associated with that. However, yes, I did mention earlier that, quote, the Omega Concern. This shows up on a couple albums, and it does mention that. Of course, this is not a letter, but I do wonder what that. At first, I thought, is that a manufacturer? Does it have to do with someone who makes guitar, drums, or bass parts or accessories and stuff? I'm actually, if you guys know and have a theory or truly know what the Omega Concern is, please drop me a line, drop me a comment. I want to know more. Roll the Bones, 1991, brought to us by the letter B. Of course, Roll the B Bones. Bravado, Roll the Bones, The Big Wheel, You Bet Your Life. Okay, there's multiple songs that begin with B on that, so that one kind of tracks, that one kind of makes sense. 1993, Counterparts. One of the theories out there is this sense of questioning, like Schrodinger's cat, right? Have you guys heard of that scientific experiment? Wherein the Schrodinger has a box, and he's trying to illustrate, I believe, difference between 1 and 0 or quantum flux and different things, mathematical and or physical things in physics, wherein there is a question. if you put a cat in a box, and if you don't open that box, honestly, if you come back 10 days, 100 years from now, you don't know whether it's dead or alive until you look. And this has to do with the observational process of science, in that a lot of science, if not all, questions whether when we observe something, testing, nature, physics, space, when we observe that, the observation, the fact that we're looking at it, that we're making scientific observations of whatever it is, does that then change the outcomes of the experiment? Does it change how a natural process, this duality, where in the cover alone, a bolt and a nut, right? These two different things, a 1 and a 0 for digital, a stop sign between red and green. Okay, you know what the liner notes look like, right? There were lots of images on there that represented the duality of counterparts. Test for Echo, 1996, 4 R's. Now, I have heard that if you go to a Grand Canyon, or if you go to a place with a massive echo and you say the word R, I'm pretty sure the ah part disappears, and all you get back from the canyons and or walls in the form of an echo, and when it's multiple, like R, 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 and all you hear is that kind of hard consonants, that R, and hence Test for Echo has 4 R's. And I'm wondering if Neil is kind of doing a little play on onomatopoeia, like, a little play on the sound of things with 4 R's, as if there were an echo in the room. Vapor Trails, 2002. It is the number 3, yes, brought to you by the letter number 3. And one theory out there, and this kind of makes sense, is that after the events, years, and everything that went down with the Ghost Rider, right? Meaning Neil's loss, Neil's recovery, Neil's newfound life, and of course, the bringing back and resurrection of Rush. One theory out there is that the 3, of course, just signifies them, right? The 3 of them, the Trinity, the triad of Rush. And that kind of makes sense to me. But if you guys have any theories about any of these, please let me know. If you have your own, I'd love to hear them. Leave me a comment below. Snakes and arrows, of course, S. The sound of a snake. Not the sound of silence, but the sound of a snake. Yes, 5 S's, brought to you by the letter S. That makes a lot of sense to me. Finally, Clockwork Angels, and this one is interesting. One theory out there is that this stands for one end, or that also equating itself with Omega in last. And then you have to ask yourself, was there any forethought, knowledge, or consideration that this was the last Rush album? And that opens up a Pandora's box of opinions, thoughts, and things that honestly we just don't know. We as fans, we don't know. Getty and Alex would have a really good clue as to that, as to how Neil felt, if Neil felt this was the last album. Now, we've talked about it before in my other videos, and we've talked about it in the chat and in different places, that we've talked about the fact that The Garden Alone is the perfect song to end Rush's career, to have their last album and their very last song and the very last lyrics written by Neil. Perfectly tracks, makes every sense in the world, in that it is a perfect reflection of who Neil was, how he felt, what he felt about life, but also the garden. Life is about love and respect, right? You have to tend your garden. You have to tend to your family. You have to take care of them, be with them to the best of your ability for every day that you can. That perfectly makes sense for Neil's final years. Even before Neil was diagnosed, Olivia, Neil's daughter, when she introduced him to friends and stuff, she's like, "This is my dad, the retired drummer." There was a past tense to the language and the thought process of Neil. In addition to that, when Neil was diagnosed, I mean, I know, and I just know that he spent every waking hour doing his best to be with and be there for his wife and daughter, for Carrie and Olivia. So yes, there is a finality to Clockwork Angels. There is a perfect, symmetrical, poetic finality to The Garden. While I was looking through Rush albums and all the liner notes, and I encourage you to do the same, I found some interesting things. Not Easter eggs, but a little couple of things that I didn't even know were there. One, Unroll the Bones at the very end, even after brought to you by the letter B, is it says, "Now it's dark." I didn't know that was there. Did you? Did you know that at the very end of the liner notes of Roll the Bones, it says, "Now it's dark," as in now it is dark? That's interesting. Now, different stages. Of course, during different stages when they mixed it, when Geddy and Alex brought together like 20 years of live music to build the different stages, multi-album, the live album with the Tinker Toys on it. Of course, this is dedicated in loving memory to Jackie and Selena, Neil's wife and daughter that he lost. And with the lyric that we all know so well, it's in different stages. Suddenly you were gone from all the lives you left your mark upon. In loving memory of Jackie and Selena. And finally, did you know what happened on September 12th, 1966, which I love, by the way, because September 12th is 9/12, which on our 24-hour clock is 21/12. But in 1966, Neil Peart received his first drum set. That's right, a gift from his parents on his 14th birthday. So yes, Neil Peart's birthday, 9/12, 1966, Neil Peart gets his very first drum set. Man, I love that very much. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, like it if you like it, share it with your friends, and hit that little bell to be notified of future videos. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys. I'm Eric, Loudboy Experience. You guys have a good one.